I'll open up today with a few chants. If you know them, you can chant along. If not, simply listen. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bunaktu Saharinyam Kalavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Bhurvasvaha Tat Savitu Vareniyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dio Yona Prachodayat. Om Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhi Swaha. Om Namo Bhagavate. 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 By chanting these mantras, we connect to a practice of thousands of years. We connect to billions of other human beings that have chanted these mantras throughout time. As we chant, we send out and irradiate positive energy, just like the Tibetan prayer wheels that spin, sending out prayers in all directions. By chanting, we send out positive intention, goodwill, loving kindness in all directions, expanding outward all the way into the cosmos. By chanting together, we unite together our energies, our vibrations, our voices. As Hazrat Inayat Khan says, "He who knows the secret of the sounds knows the mystery of the whole universe." Welcome. Namaste. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Living from the Heart, a Dharma talk about this 18-inch spiritual journey from the head to the heart. I bow in reverence to those of you joining me in the room, to those of you joining me on Zoom, and to those of you listening to the recording afterward. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being you. This week's talk is part 2 on this mind-blowing breath. And I wanted to focus today on the power of mantra, sound, and vibration. This word mantra has 2 very interesting etymologies. The first one is that manas means mind and tra means tool. In other words, our mantra is a tool for the mind. And short mantras, repeated softly, internally, or externally, are known as japa, repetition, 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 japa, japa, japa. Uniting our mantra, our preferred mantra, our sacred mantra with the breath is a profound and incredible way to practice. Some say it's almost like giving a dog a bone. It's giving the mind something to chew on, the mind something to stay focused on. A very easy way to notice when the mind gets distracted is when we have stopped chanting the mantra in our own mind. So it's a lovely tool to get the mind to stay in the here and now in this present moment experience. And I have here a mala necklace, a garland of 108 beads. It's another wonderful tool to aid us in our meditation and contemplative practice. You can thumb along the beads with each inhale and exhale, chanting your preferred or given mantra with the breath. 108 times we chant Om Namo Bhagavate, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Gate Gate Para Gate Parasam Gate Bodhi Svaha. Many mantras that can be said in a relatively short out breath. And for a long time, I remember I would have both of my hands on my knees and I would thumb along the mala garland necklace with my hand on my knee. And then one of my teachers says, no, that's not the way to do it. You must hold your hand at heart level, right in front of the heart, and thumb along your mantra like that. And I remember the first time I did that, the first time I held my hand at my heart and started moving my thumb gently up and down. And it suddenly occurred to me another activity that many of us find ourselves in, having our hand at roughly heart level, slowly moving our thumb up and down. But a very different experience it is. This practice we often find ourselves in, scrolling through our phone. And I began to think, what's the difference? The action is the same, holding the hand at heart center, moving the thumb up and moving the thumb down. In japa, we repeat the same mantra again and again and again and again. And if you've ever practiced mantra meditation, you will notice how quickly the mind protests because the mind loves novelty. It's always wanting more and more. What we have is never enough. Where we are is rarely where we want to be. So this is like pure water to quench our thirst, pure water to cleanse the body. If you're going to brush your teeth, are you going to do it with dirty water? Of course not. So if we are to cleanse the mind, to floss the mind, we also want to do it with something pure. And that pure water is our mantra. The same mantra again and again. A pure mantra that points to what is sacred, that points to the divine, that acts as a finger pointing to our own capacity to awaken in the here and now without needing anything else. Meanwhile, moving our thumb up and down, gazing at our smartphone, is feeding the wanting mind. It is feeding the mind that continually wants more and more and more. Often, if a video doesn't catch our attention in 5 seconds, we immediately move on to the next. We want our attention to be immediately taken by something new and something interesting. And when certain events happen in the public affairs, in our politics, or even disasters at different places in the world, we have a term for it. It's known as doom scrolling, where we constantly seek more and more material about this catastrophic event. With the recent election that has passed, you might have found yourself doom scrolling. But it can often happen with any catastrophe. When one country declares war on another country, you might find yourself doom scrolling. And as yogis, we are very in touch with our own mind. And we know that continuously scrolling and seeking more and more is simply bringing more clutter to the mind. If your mind was like a room, then endlessly scrolling on your phone or on a computer is like endlessly putting more and more furniture and belongings in the room. It gets stuffed, and the usefulness of the room will be greatly diminished. So we know a calm and clear mind is a better one. It is one of our fundamental goals. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the cessation of thought streams of the mind. Yoga is the mind finally becoming calm. And the mind will naturally become calm when we stop disturbing it, when we stop feeding it endlessly desiring and wanting aspects. So it's quite the opposite practice. Are you A, always cluttering your mind and putting more and more junk into the mind? Or B, clearing and cleansing the mind with divine grace, with divine intention, with a pure mantra that points to what is good and true? One etymology of mantra is manas and tra, tool for the mind. Another very interesting etymology of this word tra, T-R-A, is that it is short for transcend. So we are actually using our mantra to transcend the mind, which is another wonderful way of thinking about our mantra practice through japa, through repetition. We are able to transcend the endless ruminative thinking of the mind, the stinking thinking of the mind, to experience something larger, something deeper, and a much more vast way of living and being in this world. So the practice of uniting your mantra with your breath is another way to blow the mind away. That is what we are here to do, to blow the mind away, to transcend our personality and ego structures, to find a deeper level of presence that goes beyond the continuous movement of thinking. So mantra, japa, breath-focused meditation is an incredibly powerful way to do that. Now, you might have noticed all of the mantras that we started with were in the language of Sanskrit. And I wanted to talk about this incredible language and why it's the perfect tool to bring into our mantra meditation, why it has been chanted for thousands of years. And I'll preface this by saying that I am not a Sanskrit scholar. I do not have a PhD in Sanskritology. I am simply a practitioner like yourself. I'm simply a practitioner who has found that chanting Sanskrit and using Sanskrit in our contemplative practice is extraordinarily transformative. And I hope by talking about how beautiful Sanskrit is today, it will inspire you to also go deeper into this ancient and wonderful language. Because so many beautiful connections are created the more you go deeper into Sanskrit words and their meaning. The first thing to recognize is that we use Sanskrit all the time, whether or not you are in a yoga class. You might talk about the chakras and energy centers, or the kundalini, or nirvana. We use Sanskrit words all the time, even in our English language. And this word Sanskrit, even the word itself, has much to teach us. First, we have this san, which comes from sam, and that might sound familiar. You might know samjaya, samsara, or loka sammasta, sukhino bhavantu. So sam can mean together, completely, or absolutely. And it points to Sanskrit being described as a complete, perfected, highly polished, and organized language. So we have the Sam, and then we have the Kri. And the Kri comes from the root that means to do. So Kri literally means to do. That's where we get the words Kriya Yoga, if you know Paramahansa Yogananda's Kriya Yoga. That's also where the Shat Kriyas come from, the 6 purification practices or purification actions. That's all they are. That's all the Kriyas are, a way of doing action. And this is also where we find the word karma, also meaning action. So Sanskrit, samskritam, essentially means done together or put together in a perfect way, in a highly elaborate, highly polished way. And when you look at the Sanskrit alphabet, you can see why this is sometimes described as the perfect language. First of all, there are many more letters in the Sanskrit alphabet than there are in English. And that lets Sanskrit be a phonetic language, meaning everything is pronounced exactly as it is written. So many words, and especially names in the English language, you have no idea how to pronounce if you haven't heard it via your ear, especially because so much of the pronunciation is simply a social convention, simply how language has evolved throughout time. Meanwhile, the Sanskrit language, everything is pronounced exactly as it is written. You don't need somebody to verbalize it aloud. You don't need somebody to tell you how a certain consonant or vowel is supposed to be pronounced, or why it's pronounced like this in this word, but this in a different word. So unlike the 26th letter of our Romanized alphabet, some say there are 44, some say 48. I like to say there are 50 letters in the Sanskrit alphabet because 50 is a nice round number. It could be 54 too, which is another nice round number because 54 times 2 is 108. But for today, we can consider the 50 letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. And these letters are divided up into three categories: vowels, consonants, and the in-between sounds, known as the semi-vowels. There are 9 semi-vowels, 16 vowels, and 25 consonants. And there you have another reason this is the perfected language. 9, 16, 25. Not only do they all add up to 50, but they also represent the square number of smaller numbers. 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, and 5 squared is 25. And there you have the 3 types of letters in the Sanskrit alphabet. The consonants are also divided up into 2 categories, whether or not they are aspirated, meaning maha prana, or unaspirated, aka alpa prana. So as we learn about this mind-blowing breath, the breath deeply connects us to the energy of prana. The breath is one way that prana goes into and out of our body. And the practice of pranayama is one of becoming a master of how prana channels throughout the body. So we engage Mula Bandha, for example, the root lock, to ensure that prana does not leave through the bottom of our bodies. Jalandhara Bandha, the neck lock, is so that prana doesn't leave out through the head. So it's a way of sealing the energy in. So too, in the Sanskrit language, there are 2 ways to pronounce consonants. One is with a little puff of air, and that means it is aspirated. And another is without the puff of air. So you can say duh with a D or duh with the DH. You can say ba with a B or ba with a BH. So if you ever see an H after a consonant written in our Romanized scripts, that's a little signal. You have to aspirate it a little bit. So you could almost say Bhagavad Gita, BH, Bhagavad Gita, a little puff of air with that B at the beginning. So we can even learn about prana just by looking at these consonants. And we can also get in touch with the throat chakra with our vowels. There are 16 vowels which directly correlate to the 16 petals on the throat chakra. And finally, we have some of the most compelling ideas when we look at these semi-vowels. The antashta, meaning that which stands in between. So in between our consonants, which involve stopping the air as it leaves our body, and the vowels, which involve a continuous flow of air, we have the semi-vowels, which involve some constriction of air in order to vocalize the sound. So we have lam, vam, ram, ham. Does that sound familiar? We'll get into it in just a little bit. And we have also the letter H, a semi-vowel. This which brings us to the Sanskrit word for I, the subject I, which is aham. Aham. And V.S. Houston wrote this about aham. In Sanskrit, even the sounds which make the word for I are consciously selected. Aham. Ah is the first spoken sound, as well as the first sound of the Sanskrit alphabet. It can be discovered by breathing in with the mouth slightly open, releasing the breath with sound that requires minimal effort. It naturally arises in the throat before the articulation of other sounds. Ha is the last letter of the Sanskrit alphabet. After all the systematic patterns created by the movement of the tongue and lips have produced in order for all the other letters of the alphabet, the final sound is ha. It is also the only consonant sound that moves by the power of the breath alone, and the only consonant in exact proximity to a. The final letter M is the very last sound produced in the mouth, because it occurs due to the closing of the lips. In Sanskrit, aham is the beginning, the breath of life which brings forth creation, and the end. And this is expressed not just symbolically by the letters aham, but physically based on their location in the mouth. Think about that. Aham. Aham. Such a wonderful way to encapsulate who you are. The beginning and the end. The first sound that we can make, this ah, and then what comes next? Ha. This aha. That's you. You are this surprise, this miracle of being. So you might have heard of another very famous Sanskrit sound that you can make. Om. And there are a number of different ways to conceptualize this sound, this sacred syllable. One way to think about it, when you do hear this idea that Om contains everything in the universe, you might think of a prism. You might think of the white color of light going through a prism and splitting apart to reveal all the other colors on the electromagnetic spectrum, all the other colors that we perceive. In other words, the color white contains all other colors. So you could say the vibration Om contains all the other vibrations. It's kind of like the old joke. Do you know how to say the entire alphabet in 1 second? Nah. Just ends up being a jumble, right? Well, that jumble, that one thing that contains all things, is the sacred syllable Om. Now, you might have also heard that Om is God's name and form, Nama Rupe. And you might be wondering, how in the world is that possible? Well, when you get into comparative religion, it's an incredible journey to discover other ways to think about and conceptualize God. Our Western image of God tends to be pretty close to Santa Claus. He sees you when you're sleeping. He sees you when you're awake. He knows when you have been bad or good. We often think that God is some omniscient entity watching every single action that we do and labeling people as naughty or nice. That God tends to be white, living in a cloud with a long beard, not too dissimilar to the god Zeus. But there are so many other ways to think about God. Even when you hear this idea that God is the creator, you really have to ask yourself, what does that mean? Did God essentially just create the universe and release his hands and let everything play out on its own? In other words, did God essentially have one of those wind up toys and he spun it around to wind it up and let it go, and now everything is simply playing it out? This is how some people think of God as the creator. But there's another much more intriguing idea that God did not create the universe once and everything is playing itself out. God is continuously creating the universe in each and every moment. God is perpetuating existence. Existence always and forever depends upon God. And this idea, as far fetched as it might seem, is exactly how much of the world works. In order for something to exist, it must be perpetuated by a set of causes and conditions. If you remove any of those causes and conditions, that thing will no longer exist. If you look at any aspect of life, you find that it needs to be constantly nourished. An apple that is on the tree will survive. If you pluck it, it will die. If you remove anything from its life giving force, it will die. This is another lesson of the mind blowing breath. Our existence depends upon this breath. It depends upon the air that is around us. We would not last very long at all if all the air suddenly disappeared. I often think about this anytime I vibrate a singing bowl. You take the staff, you circle it around the singing bowl to create a vibration. And as long as you continue circling, the vibration continues. But as soon as you release the stick in contact from the bowl, the vibration will dissipate and disappear. In other words, for anything to perpetuate, for any vibration to perpetuate, something must be doing the vibrating. So that, my friends, is God. That, my friends, is Brahman. 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 That's right. The same root as to breathe. And that H isn't there on accident. You have to fill up the lungs. You have to feel that aha. You have to feel the brah, the expansion. That's what Brahman means, expansion, opening. That is the Om. It is the fundamental vibration that keeps this universe happening, that keeps existence existing. So the same applies to the earth. All of life on this earth stays here and is able to stay alive because of the continuous influx of light and warmth from the sun. If the sun was going to disappear, it would not be long before all of life on this earth ceased to exist. So God is that light. God is that warmth. God is that continuous influx of love, energy, whatever you want to call it, that keeps this universe going. So we often easily forget that which is constantly nourishing us all the time. We so easily get complacent and we don't recognize what is constantly feeding us into existence at all times. There's a story of the Sufi figure Mullah Nasruddin, who is both a fool and a wise man. He was out one day in his garden sprinkling breadcrumbs around the flower beds. A neighbor came by and asked, Nasruddin, why are you doing that? Nasruddin answered, Oh, I do it to keep the tigers away. The neighbor said, But there aren't any tigers within thousands of miles of here. Nasruddin replied, Effective, isn't it? When something is always there, we often don't recognize what life would be like if it wasn't there. Another final important way to conceptualize the Om is that it is a bija sound. Bija means seed. And just as the seed contains all the necessary information to create the tree, our bija sounds contain the fundamental information, the encoding to create the energy that it is pointing to. So Om is the bija sound of the entire universe. It is the seed sound of the entire universe. You cannot have a tree without a seed. So too, you cannot have the universe without the Om. And bija sounds are another wonderful practice to bring into our lives. If japa is a short 3 to 6, sometimes 10 mantra to bring into our meditation. Bija is one syllable, and it is the seed sound for so much more. So many Hindu deities have their own bija sounds, like Gam for Ganesha, Ayam for Saraswati, Shrim for Durga, Klim for Kali, Shrim for Lakshmi, and of course, Ram is the bija sound of Lord Rama. There is even a story of an older monk who throughout his entire life would sit down at his altar and he would chant Ram, 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 Ram. And this old man, you can say that his name is Steve, was chanting one day, and then suddenly, right before him, Rama appeared. And Rama said, "Yes, what is it that you ask of me?" And the old man, Steve, we can call him, said, "Oh, I mean, I just loved chanting your name. I don't need anything from you at all." And Rama said, "Really? You've been chanting my name this whole time and you don't even want my attention?" And Steve said, "No." And then for the rest of Steve's life, Rama followed him around going, "Steve, Steve, Steve, Steve." But if we talk about cleansing the mind using the power of mantra, as the saying goes, just say the name of God and love will teach you directly. This is such a powerful practice. Just chant the name of God again and again. So we started with the mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate, the Bhagwan, the Bhagava. That is the Lord. That's why the Bhagavad Gita is the Lord's song. Namo means to praise. It means salutations. This is why we say Om Namah Shivaya. This is where Namaste and Namaskaram comes from. So Om Namo Bhagavate again and again and again. That's all you need, my friends, for your own awakening, to transcend your own mind. Just say the name of God and love will teach you directly. And this is an interesting thing that I have read about that commandment that we have all heard. Do not speak the name of God in vain. And I think we've all heard it in a fairly glib way. It's a way to encourage people not to swear or cuss, if you ever use that word. People hear this commandment, one of the 10 commandments, there aren't that many, and they think, oh, I better not say, God damn it, I better not say the son of God's name when I hit my thumb with a hammer. People think this eternal commandment given from God simply means don't shout out an exclamation in surprise or in pain using God's name. But it's really important to recognize that the word vain can mean other things, and there's other ways to translate this crucial commandment. Vain can mean empty, nothing, worthless, or to no good purpose. So it doesn't mean don't swear, don't cuss. It means don't use God's name without intention. Don't use it to mean nothing. And some even interpret this commandment to mean don't say the name of God at all. Just don't say it. It's sacred, it's special. So, in the Old Testament, in the Jewish scriptures, this is one way to interpret this commandment. You're not supposed to say the name of God at all. So, there are other ways that they kind of get around it. One is simply by just saying the syllables, saying the letters themselves. YHVH, Yod He Vad He. YHVH. Does that sound familiar? Those right there are the semi-vowels. When we think about the semi-vowels, those are also the bija sounds of the chakras. The bija sound of our root chakra is lam. Of our sacral chakra is vam. Solar plexus is ram. The heart chakra is yam. The throat chakra is ham. And here we have the exact same letters that make up God's name. What an incredible coincidence. Yod, He, Vad, He. Another word for God that you might have heard is Allah. And the word Allah is thought to come from the Arabic words al and ilah. And for the Spanish speakers, you know that we tend to combine a and l into al. So al really just means the, and Allah means the God. Think about that. Again, we have the semi-vowels, Allah. Again, we have something with an H in it. This ah, this wow, this aham moment that we all have. So, another way to say this name of God is Yahweh. Again, the semi-vowels. Again, the anashta, that which stands in between. What do you think you are as a human being? You are that which stands in between heaven and earth, in between the material and the spiritual. There is you, the bridge between the two. So, what happens if you breathe? What sound do you make when you breathe? Yahweh, Yahweh. In other words, we all came into this world speaking God, and God will be the last thing we say on our lips. Just breathing is a sound, the sound of God. When you listen to your breath, when you notice the inhale pass through your nostrils and the sound that comes out, think of Yahweh, Yahweh. The breath teaches us about the divine. It teaches us everything we need to know. It is a gateway to the divine. We even have this word, breathtaking. What aspects of life are breathtaking? The awesome ones, the ones that fill us with awe and wonder, the ones that make us go, ah, aha, wow, yeah, wow. Those are the breathtaking sounds. Those are the experiences that blow our mind away. The mind blowing experiences of our life. Literally, this breath. The poet William Stafford wrote this. Starting here, what do you want to remember? How sunlight creeps along a shining floor? What scent of old wood hovers? What softened sound from outside fills the air? Will you ever bring a better gift for the world than the breathing respect that you carry wherever you go right now? Are you waiting for time to show you some better thoughts? When you turn around, starting here, lift this new glimpse that you found. Carry into the evening all that you want from this day. This interval you spent reading or hearing this, keep it for life. What can anyone give you greater than now, starting here, right in this room, when you turn around? One of my absolute most favorite lines. Will you ever bring a better gift for the world than the breathing respect that you carry wherever you go right now? That's the secret, my friends. Everything you need is right underneath your nose. God is right underneath your nose. It is this breath. It is the Yahweh. It is the energy. So, this is our final lesson on breath, on sound, on this practice of breathing together. The breath connects us all. We all share in this breath. If you are breathing, it means you are alive, and we all breathe the same air. This is what unites us. I used to think that we teach to focus on the breath because it's non-controversial. I used to think, oh, okay, if you teach about Krishna, if you teach about Allah, if you teach about Yahweh, it will ostracize some people and they won't hear what you are trying to express. So, a wonderful way to teach in a secular way is to get people to focus on the breath. But now I realize the breath is what unites us all. It is the true meaning of religion, a rebinding of ourselves to each other. This is our practice to recognize that this breath we share in is the same experience of every other human being that is walking on this earth and has ever walked on this earth. It means that you are alive and that you are here to experience this miracle of life, that this breath is a miracle, a divine miracle. And the very first breath that you took said the name of God, and the last breath that you take will say the name of God. And there's nothing else that you need. All you need is the breath. Enlightenment is never more than a breath away, my friends. It is, in fact, right here. Once our mind is fully cleansed of all delusion and illusion, we can finally get in touch with reality as it is. We can breathe, enjoy the breath, and smile at the breath and be with the breath. This divine inspiration that teaches us about life. If you believe in the Big Bang, my friends, that also implies a big crunch. Just as this universe is expanding, eventually it will all collapse, just as the inhale inevitably leads to the exhale. The breath is a dewdrop on the lotus flower of life, reflecting all that is in the cosmos. If anything is divine, everything is divine. You reflect back that divinity that underlies everything. And every breath that you take can chant the name of the divine. Just chant the name of God, and love will teach you everything you need to know. Anytime someone tells you to notice the breath, go deeper. Be the breath. Give yourself over to the breath. Enjoy the breath. Experience the miracle of the breath. That is what we are here to do. So, for 5 minutes, let us sit in silence to give ourselves over to this divine experience that is fundamentally a human experience. The in breath and the out breath. Om Swasti Prajabhyaha Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahimahishaha Gobrahmanebhyaha Shubhamastu Nityam Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu Om Shanti 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 Namaste.